Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. Save America. Cut the federal budget. Along the way, spending restraint would reduce deficits and borrowing. In theory, that would make it easier for the Federal Reserve to control the money supply and hold down inflation. And, by the way, cutting the federal budget almost always means reducing anti-business regulations, because all these programs have major strings tied to them. Think diversity, equity, inclusion, or just other anti-business actions. Just think about how holding down the supply side of the economy, which itself is inflationary, there's a lot of work to be done for pro-growth tax reform, especially extending the highly successful Trump tax cuts. And I'm sure that's coming as the House Republicans put together their pro-growth agenda. But really, starting at the beginning is starting with the budget. And starting with the budget goes back to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's very excellent speech yesterday at the New York Stock Exchange that included a discretionary spending rollback to FY 2022 and then a 1% budget cap for annual spending growth thereafter. The package would also include clawing back $50 to $75 billion of unspent COVID money. One item not in Mr. McCarthy's speech yesterday would be an attempt to repeal Joe Biden's cancellation of student loans, which would be a $500 billion savings. He did mention H.R. 1, Lower Energy Cost Act, which I just referred to as reopening the fossil fuel spigots. That'll increase growth and reduce inflation. And another part of the package is the REINS Act, that's R-E-I-N-S Act, where any regulatory action by the federal bureaucracy over $100 million would require a congressional law. Think how wonderful that would be in stopping the crazy EPA tailpipe action that would basically end the internal combustion engine without anybody ever taking a vote. Now, the GOP package also going to include work requirements for Medicaid, food stamps, and welfare. That's what Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich did about 20-some-odd years ago. And reportedly, the package would rescind the $80 billion IRS package for 87,000 new agents, which, of course, would go after principally people making under $400,000 a year. And the Republican package would also reportedly repeal the green tax credits in the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act, which has now been re-estimated to cost well over $1 trillion, and with uncapped refundable tax credits with virtually no time limit. That whole goofy bill could wind up costing $3 to $4 trillion over the next 35 years. Believe it or not, serious people have made these guesstimates. Anyway, the total savings from all these measures could be somewhere around $4.5 trillion over the next 10 years. It's a nice chunk of change in return for a one-year increase in the debt ceiling. The final package is supposed to be decided on today by House leaders and voted on as early as next week. Now, one quick technical point. President Biden, who doesn't want to play ball at all, who hasn't responded to Kevin McCarthy in 75 days since their last date, he keeps saying that the House Republicans have to come up with a budget because his administration finally put a budget out, although it was a month late. But Biden's just blowing smoke here. Actually, the House will put out a budget resolution sometime in the next month or so, and that's the equivalent to the administration budget. But as Biden well knows, this debt ceiling package is a separate legislative item. It is not the budget resolution, which will be a 10-year item, presumably subject to some kind of reconciliation in the U.S. Senate, although it's worth noting that the Democratic Senate has never put out a budget, ever. But McCarthy and company will have a very strong debt ceiling package with no new taxes, a nice regulatory rollback, and a decent amount of spending restraint. It's pro-growth and it's counter-inflationary. I think it's bullish for stocks and for blue-collar, typical working families. And it'll finally put an end to the frenetic Biden spending that has given us the first dose of serious stagflation in 40 years. So, save America. Go on a second date, the two of you.